Well, thank you very much for joining me today, first of all, Suneera. I was watching your social media, and one of the things that really struck out to me that you shared in one of the posts, where you were just sharing, things behind the scenes, kind of. And at one point, you said, "I built this amazing podcast called CEO School. It has 2 million downloads, and some days I wake up thinking I should delete it all." The reason why I wanted to start there is because it kind of shows the beauty and pain of success sometimes, the contrast that we all live in, but we don't see it from a distance. Like somebody who hasn't had a podcast, who hasn't had 2 million downloads, probably goes, "What the heck are you talking about?"
Yeah.
Tell us more.
Oh my goodness. I love that we're going there first. One of the things that I think we all have that, right? There's always, I think success is, we're always chasing something. That's important. To be ambitious is something that's super important. I've always been somebody that has had really big goals, and anything I set out to go do, and if I really am like, this is what we're doing, I do it with excellence. So that's something that is like in my DNA, whether it's, I've built multiple companies to record-breaking success, and when I decided I was going to do the podcast, that was in 2020. I was so exhausted from the boys club. I'm a fintech CEO, built $1 billion business. At that time, the company was probably about 20 million in revenue, and just scaling, doing all the most amazing things. I raised venture, from seed round, A round, B round. I raised venture while pregnant. I did all the things that they say you can't. But I was heads down in execution. Like that's something that's been very core to my story. And in 2020, when the pandemic was happening, I was, we're like home now, and you get like life is completely changed and it's so different. And I was showing up on social media, like telling my founder's journey about the company, but I didn't realize how many people were actually listening. And it wasn't there was no show, there was no nothing. It was just a small social media following. But it wasn't about the number of audience. It was the quality of the conversation, right? And so when the pandemic struck and it hit, I was doing this thing called Wind Down Wednesday on, this is when Instagram Live had just come out. So I'd show up on Wednesdays, and I just talked to some like just awesome women founders. Like I couldn't find the space in the fintech world. And so it was just a space, and it wasn't for women in tech. There was many women in tech, but it was just a space for women. And sometimes my lives would be like 15 people that would show up. Maybe it'd be like 40 people that would show up. And during the pandemic, that first week when it was crazy chaos, the world had stopped. And, I was a CEO we probably had 100 employees at the time. And I showed up for the Wednesday live, and there was a couple hundred women there waiting on the Wednesday live. And so at this time, my audience was probably about 20,000 followers maybe at that time. And I was surprised at like, what, everyone's here. And it's because these women, they just there was not a space for them to go to say, what are we doing for, like, well, how are you handling your employees? How are we turning off are we shutting down the offices? What's going to happen? Like, should I be stopping my suppliers? Like, so there was so much chaos in that world. But what it really was we needed to connect in community, right? That's really what it was. And they really didn't have a space. And that next day, so that day I showed up to that Instagram live. The next day I showed up I was like, okay, it was supposed to be for on Wednesday, and so many questions, and I couldn't finish like having the conversations. So I showed up the next day, and the next day on the live, it was 1,000 women on that Instagram live. And then it was like, a couple thousand on the third day, and realized that there just needed to be a space for this dialogue. And that's when in 2020, we had to take the conversation offline, off of Instagram, into a more deeper conversation, which was the podcast CEO School, because I didn't go to CEO school. And I was exhausted of trying to prove to everyone, right? Because that, I'm a capable CEO, or this is what, CEOs are pale, male, and stale, and, in the tech world especially. And I just was fighting for my space. But you don't have to look a certain way. You don't have to have a certain degree. You don't have to have a certain network. And you don't have to go to CEO school. And so that's really where the podcast began. And it's going 4 years strong, and that community continues to build. And now, it's 500,000, followers and subscribers and all the different things. And it's such a wonderful space. And you can have a wonderful space and do things and get to the, from something small to the, to whatever your vision of success is. but that doesn't mean that it's always perfect either. So there are days, right? I have a weekly show. I've been doing it for 4 years. Doesn't mean that it's not exhausting. Doesn't mean that, the algorithm doesn't annoy you. Doesn't mean that, like there's so much changing all the time, but you have to really stay connected to your purpose of how, why you're doing what you're doing. And that, I think, is how success really happens. Is although many times I do feel like I don't want to show up, I'm really exhausted. I have, now I'm on my second fintech company, but I was doing all of this alongside me building my businesses, alongside having 2 daughters, alongside living life, doing the things. It kept going because, although it's hard, and I can share the hard too, but your why is what really continues to carry it forward. And that's really what success is. Success is defined at the end of it. It's not about, people ask all the time of, how you built $1 billion business. It's like, I just kept showing up. So even in the moments that you want to quit, even in the moments that you want to give up, it's really about its consistency. But it doesn't mean that there aren't moments of like, it's perfect, it's pretty, it's not always exciting as well. But your why, carries you through.
Is there something specific that keeps you alive in those moments? Is there something that you've found like, the why, yes, but how do you get triggered into your why? Because I imagine, and this is me projecting, totally say, Ajit, that's not true. But it would be something like this. Oh crap, I have to do this again. I'm tired, I'm exhausted. Yesterday was such a long day and I'm thinking about these 1,000 ideas. I have to show up for this podcast interview that I probably didn't prepare for, right? What is the trigger? How do you get yourself back on your feet?
I think that's a really great question. And I think that it changes, right? I think that allow yourself grace, like period. It's hard. Hard work is the shortcut. There is no shortcut. You can go viral, right? Or you can do the thing, but that's not consistent, right? Consistency is what wins. And consistency is hard. Showing up is hard, right? It's, if it's what's good for you is not always easy, right? And so I think when you ask like what carries you through, it's discipline, right? It's truly discipline, and it's like creating habits. And, for me, growing up, it was, if I'm going to put my mind to something, I'm going to do it. We're going to do it right. And we're not quitters, right? So I think I naturally maybe it was like the immigrant upbringing. Just failure is not an option, right? My parents sacrificed everything to come to this country for me to go to college. So failure is not an option. And so I think that level of mindset is something that I've grown up around. But it doesn't mean, and this is why the grace part is important, that, some days aren't going to suck. But you don't quit on a bad day. I think one of like the best advice that I can, I give that all the time to my team. And, it's really important. Like quitting is okay. Like if you really aren't happy and it's not working for you, you have to tune in and listen to your intuition. So don't continue to do something that you don't love. But quitting on a bad day just means you're letting that emotion get to you. And the way like the formula I really think about it is, like anything that's great, you're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. If your good days are continually outweighing your bad days, so you're going to have, most of my days are great days. I'm going to have some bad days. That's okay. That's part of life. No one's anything, whether it's your business, whether it's your social, whether it's your podcast, whether it's, whatever the things are, you're going to have consistency more in the good days. That's what you're looking for. And if that's the case, then you continue to go. And you got to keep in mind that I'm going to have bad days. You accept the bad days. But when the bad days are starting to outweigh the good days, that's when you have to really pay attention. Is this really where the bad days are outweighing the good days? And so when that's the case and the bad days are truly, and you're checking in to outweigh those good days, then you can take that moment to really say, okay, the bad days are really outweighing it. I don't know if it's going to change, or, you go through the things. Is there a solution to this? Do I want to continue to do it? But you don't quit on just a bad day, right? And so I do think that's how I kind of determine my formula of what stays and what goes is, what's that ratio? Is it the good days or is it the bad days? And I think most of the time you'll say, like, if you really love something, right? Like you've been doing this for so long as well, you continue because it's the good days. When I quit my job in 2021 as CEO of the company post my Series D transaction, it was most amount of like everything that I could have ever imagined, right? built a company from 0 to 140 million in recurring revenue, exited at the top of my game, sold to the greatest private equities, did all the things. One of 20 women to build $1 billion business. And at that point, I felt like I kept going because I was chasing a goal, not necessarily because my good days were greater.
Yeah.
And I had a chance to really reflect upon it post, when you have these big moments and you achieve a lot of things, and really checking in intrinsically. And I wasn't happy. I had created an incredible company, but I'd lost that passion for why I was doing it. I had lost, the company that I had built. The culture was changing, and it's supposed to, right? It's a large company now. I created the corporate that I left, and it was time that I had to check in to say, but I didn't quit on a bad day. I didn't quit when it was just that, when it was getting hard. I spent the next year creating a transition, thinking about, okay, if this is what I really want to do, and then quitting right?
Yeah.
And so,
I
didn't quit. I exit, right? So you don't quit. You could do it gracefully.
I love the idea of don't quit on a bad day.
Yeah.
Because emotions can get the best of you.
Yeah, we all have them.
Yeah.
We all have them. And if you think about those moments, like you look back and those are always your worst decisions too. When you're and we're human. I make bad decisions on when I'm super emotional and I'm super frustrated. And you should really and this is something that I really do encourage, if you have teams, if you have people, have these conversations, even with your team, right? Because it's so hard to cultivate great talent, great team, and everyone's going to have a bad day. The boss is going to have a bad day. The team member is going to have a bad day. Don't quit on each other on a bad day. And that's something that I'm not going to be perfect. You're not going to be perfect. But together, right? Let's have more good days than bad days.
And often the bad day or the bad moments are a setup for a great life.
Yeah.
It builds character. It builds grit. It builds emotional resilience. If you let it. It brings an awareness of what I like and what I don't like. I had many moments of such, but definitely had a whole dark night of the soul kind of journey in my own personal life, and many of such journeys in my personal life. And every single time, what I observed it happens so you could be ready for what's coming next.
Yeah.
Because what's coming next is far more fulfilling. I don't know if it's greater or not greater, but definitely a lot more fulfilling, a lot more aligned, a lot more present to what you would be creating for yourself for overall in your life. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in don't quit on your bad day. If you want to quit, if that was the thing that you want to do it on a good day. So at least
But success
you made
is hard.
It's you made a good decision. Yeah.
It is, but you have to also be willing to accept that you're gonna eat some shit. Yeah. That's part of it. I don't know where this, I think this is where social media and everything else, we only see everyone's great days.
Yeah.
No one's posting their bad days. That's why it's important, when I share some of those messages of yes, everything looks amazing, but I have bad days too. I want to quit sometimes. And I'm like, man, do I really want to? Because it's hard.
Yep.
Right. And so I do think that you have to remind yourself of that it's okay that it's hard. That's what makes it worth it. Right. That's what makes it. That's why everyone can't do it, because they don't have the resiliency to keep going. They don't have that mindset to push through. They don't have that support or whatever that is. You've got to build the tools around you. And so if you know it's going to be hard, right? If I know I'm preparing for something, then I have the right, if I've trained for it, if I have the right support system around, if I've got the right tools around, I'm more likely to succeed. And that's why it's so important to have those pieces around you, have the support systems around you, have the coaches around you, have the, tools around you, all the things, so that when it does get hard, because it will, you have the tools to keep going.
Yeah. And giving yourself that grace allows you to also have faith that you can build those tools.
Yes.
You have some hope in yourself that this will work out, and you can pace yourself for it. Suneera, there's another thing that I've seen you mention it, and I know it's kind of interesting because I can resonate with it at some level, is somewhere you mentioned that I'm a brown female entrepreneur in fintech, which is a bros community, if I may call it that. How does that experience unfold for you? By that, what I mean is we all in some way are outliers, or most of us, or people who are my audience, are often seen and feel like that they're outliers. They don't fit. And because they don't fit because of their spirituality, because of skin tone, because of whatever the reason, because they're females, most of our listeners are females, because of those reasons, they feel like they don't fit. what is it that you've found as a narrative for yourself, or as a narrative that you speak out loud to yourself, or however it may be, that allows you to stay present when you are kind of creating a way in an industry where there is no path for you?
Yeah, I love that question. I wish I understood this sooner, is that you don't have to fit, right? I think for the first, 5 to 7 years of my career, I was trying to fit. I used to say a man in a skirt in fintech. Like I was always, I dressed different. I was trying to be part of it's not, if I look back in hindsight, it's not my fault, right? Everybody wants a seat at the table. It's not your fault. This is human nature. We all want to feel like we belong, that we're liked, that we're supported, that we're heard. These are human to human things that we crave. Business is personal. Whoever says business is not, I was so exhausted from hearing, business isn't personal. It's the most personal thing that we do. You want to feel part of the table. And when the table doesn't look like you, when the table doesn't talk like you, when the table doesn't even pay attention to you, right? There's so much, even if it's not conscious bias, there's so much unconscious bias, right? And we can't change that. So control your controllables, right? I can't control, what fintech looked like or what financial services look like. And I was trying for so long to try to fit in. And I think it worked for many. I think it worked. And that's part of it. And I don't love that. But I didn't have a choice. And you have to learn how to play the game. And that's the shitty part of, sometimes some of the, building a business sometimes. But I really look back and I wish I didn't try to play the game. Like I wish, and it didn't happen for me until maybe 5 to 7 years into my career, post-motherhood really, where I was so much in my masculine in these rooms and in the industry. But I'm not, my energy is actually a very feminine energy. And instead of trying to shift my energy, right, if I could just bring my energy to the table, it would change or create a new table, right? Like I didn't need that. I didn't need it. And after having Mila, my first daughter, and then Anna, I feel like it really did open up a different side. And I think, a lot of women will experience this post, just motherhood. Really, it's so different. It's so unique. It's so incredible. Being a parent is so incredible. And I had to show up different. I couldn't leave a different part of me now, like at the table. And I do think that it changed for me. I think when I finally gave myself that respect, I allowed myself that space to bring my whole self to the table. We created the most incredible organization and we did things differently. And I didn't have the confidence at that time, like in myself. I didn't have the belief in myself because I had everyone around me constantly doubting me. But the advice that I want to give to anyone who feels like they are the outlier, that is your superpower, right? That is it. That's your superpower. Bring what's unique to the table. That's what the world needs. If everything is looks the same, is the same, then nothing's going to change. We have to bring we're getting to bring a fresh perspective to the table. We're building the most products in a unique way, right? And it's not about diversity. And I share this a lot in, the large, the tech conferences, and that's really important, but it's really important about diversity of thought as well. So when we think about even diversity and what we're bringing to the table, everyone knows why it's important, because we need to build products and services that, we have differentiating thoughts at the table, right? It's not just about the color of our skin or the age or the gender. It's really about the differences in our thoughts and what we can create together. And not every room also, and so I also can share that this is a very open thought process, a very optimistic and hopeful thought process. And I also know that sometimes isn't the reality, right? And so we do have to, we do have to figure out how to play if we want to win. But it doesn't mean that you change who you are. It just means we've got to double down on our unique value propositions. If that person's not listening, then there's somebody else that will. And so you have to be willing to also part. You have to be willing to say, that's okay. And you're not going to be everything to everyone. And that's hard as a human sometimes, because you want to, especially those that are outliers, I feel like our empathy levels are so high because we know what it feels like to feel like the outsider. So we want everybody to be included. We want everybody to be together, right? We want to create a space that is for all. And that sometimes isn't the reality. And so control your controllables. If you're not receiving that back, you don't need that. Like, let's go build something where we create our own space. And that's exactly what I've been trying to do for, in the fintech space. Even right now, I'm building my second company, and we're building the business credit score. It just doesn't exist. It's so exciting, but it's really about an equitable landscape, right? It's really about having, in financial services, women, people of color, we're just left out of the financial ecosystem. And that's because there's unconscious bias. There's not the tools where there's humans making decisions about other humans. It should be based on data, and there's no standardization of that data. And so even after all the things, I think that people who are those outliers, who have been left out, are the ones that find ways and build products and solutions to bring everybody with them, to bring everybody to the table.
So what I'm really hearing you say here, or what I'm hearing or experiencing of what you're saying is, if you feel you're different, it may be an opportunity to create something different.
I agree.
Because that's not a challenge, that is a gift.
It is. It's a strength. We should double down there.
That's beautifully put. If you are different, consider you're being created to create something different. And that's so important to kind of notice, like I said, not only for somebody with a different skin tone and so forth, but if you just feel that because of your personality, because of your accent, because of whatever. I remember this, it has happened, and it happened to me recently again, which is kind of funny. Even with all the success, it can happen to anyone. I'm sure it happens to you as well still. But when I first started in the coaching field, the first ever comment I got from somebody who is more senior to me. And so, you look at these people, you go like, oh, I would love to be mentored by this guy because, they are the person that holds the coaching community together and so forth. And so I was in this group with a bunch of people, and we were all introducing ourselves. I was a new kid on the block at that time. Somehow I got invited because I had a friend, and she took me upstairs to be in this group, which is all very successful coaches. And the person one of the people that I looked up to looked at right dead in my eyes and said, oh, you're not going to make it. Oh. And I was like, why? I mean, I didn't say why, but I was in my heart. I was like, why? Why would you say that? And then he immediately follows it up is because you're a brown guy. I was like, and this world is coaching world is meant for females over 40 who are white. And I was like, it's racist at every level, first of all, which from a coach, it was like, what are you doing in this field? Like, you're supposed to be a non-judgmental, curious person. Instead of that, you're like straight up judgment.
My heart.
Yeah, it was like, it took me off for like 3-4 months. I started to doubt, am I making a good decision? Because maybe he's right. Maybe he's saying it out of the kindness of his heart, and he's not trying to be racist. He's just being honest. And he's trying to make me aware that, dude, it's not going to be working out for you because he wants me to do something better. I mean, really, I really thought for a minute that I shouldn't be doing it. Like, I think at least 2 or 3 months, it sent me down this downward spiral. And I was like, oh, shit, I should probably quit. But then I was like, no, who is this person to tell me what I should be doing? I should be doing what I want to do. And so thankfully, I continued to do. And this person now is not even in the industry. I haven't seen him in a long time. So I don't know if he does anything in the world anymore in this field or has moved on. I have no idea. But
because he's obviously not a good coach.
He is a terrible coach. I was like, dude, like, what? Who leads with that? Even if you want to communicate something like this, can we do it privately, where you make a point?
It hurts. And you know what you said? What's really interesting is like you carry it with you, and you almost start to believe it yourself.
Yeah. Because especially if it comes from a person that is of some authority in your mind, even if nobody really has authority over you, but in your mind you think, oh, they must know something. Like anybody listening to this is kind of projecting into us, Suneera knows something, Ajit knows something, that's why I'm listening to them. And then you have to become extra mindful of what you say, but clearly that person was not. And even recently somebody said, you know what, Ajit, maybe you should take some accent training because your accent's kind of weird. I was like, okay, like, it's okay. My accent's weird. I have traveled around the world. Of course, I don't know when I say something, it sometimes comes from UK because I've traveled there and lived there. I've been in Italy for several months in a year. So sometimes my words are a little funny there. I lived in Malaysia. I grew up in India, and now I live in US for the past 7 years. Of course, my accent is weird. But that doesn't mean I should fix
weird.
it.
It's unique.
It's just different. It's like, but it's not like you can't understand what I'm saying. Yeah. It might be like, oh, did he pronounce that right? And I probably do mispronounce a lot, but I think that's all right. You will always be judged by the people who want to judge you.
I agree. And that's just, I think the world can be such a cruel place, right? It's just such a cruel, I think we live in a world when anyone can say anything that they want to, right? And this is exactly where social media is very, very, very hard because you're not going to be everything to everyone, and you've got to get comfortable, right? This is part of success, is you've got to get comfortable that, and especially if you're different, right? There's going to be somebody there's going to be doubters, and instead of using it, and it's easy to say because it does. I mean, it's happened to me my entire career. I quit my job because of it, right? Like I wasn't trying to be an entrepreneur. I took my first idea of Stax back to my old company, which ended up, saying that I would never be successful in this because I was, a young kid, right? There's not just sexism, there's racism, there's ageism too,
yeah.
right? Like you're always underestimated. But of course that sits with you, but you can take that underestimation, and it always fueled me. So when, especially, I don't know, you tell, a strong woman that she can't do something, like
she's
it's
gonna go
over.
watch me.
I'm going to be like, watch me do this. And that's what it was. And it fueled me to prove them wrong. And there's nothing wrong with that as well. And so use it as fuel. And in short, and there's going to be even as I was scaling, I can name so many stories. I'll share one really quick with you at a venture conference. So after I got, it took me 3 years to get an investment. My first, Series A investors invited me out to this tech, CEO group, and they bring all their portfolio companies together every year. I was so excited to meet other CEOs that were building, it was all kinds of tech, all kinds of SaaS solutions and software solutions. And I get to this conference and I'm standing outside. I had to take a phone call and write everyone's arriving. And so I'm outside, I'm on the phone, and then some, SUV pulls up, tall white guy, in his, early 50s, walks out of the car, taps me on my shoulder. I'm on the phone, but he's like, which way is the registration? So I'm like, oh, okay, it's just over there, right? And then I get back on the phone and I'm on, on the call with, I think it was WorldPay at the time, just massive partner. Mm-hmm. And second SUV pulls up, another, tall white guy comes out the door, looking for a man in finance, the typical, right? Another guy comes out, and then I'm on the phone, and then he's looking at me and he's like, which way is registration? Okay. And I was like, it's that way. So I'm like, okay, then this literally happens the third time. And I'm literally on the phone, and I am not the event planner, right? I'm not the event planner. And I'm also, I'm a kind person, so I'm always trying to be helpful. But I walk inside, and they obviously assumed, right, that I'm the event coordinator, right? And as soon as I walked inside, and I was 2 minutes late because I was finishing up my phone call because I was disturbed by all the men in finance. Yeah. I walk in, and the LP, the partner of the venture group, is like, and I'm so excited to announce our newest portfolio CEO, Suneera Madhani. You're going to love her. She's the founder of Stax. They've built, $5 billion in payments at this point, blah, blah, blah. And I'm walking in, and I'm like, hello, everyone. And you should see their faces.
Drop.
Right. And those guys at the end of the night, going back to the boys club, we were having drinks at the end of the night. We're laughing about it, right? And it's unconscious bias. Yeah. They weren't assholes. They weren't trying to be rude. Those, that group of CEOs I was with, they ended up becoming my peer group for years and years, right? We did all the most amazing things, but sometimes this is why it's important for you to succeed if you're different, because then you can change what the room looks like, right? You have to, if it's not for the first, then there's not going to be the next one. And so instead of it, and it's hard. I know, giving advice it's so easy, but I felt in so many moments where it's man, I don't belong. It's so hard, but you have to persevere through it, because you succeeding is not just for you. It's for the next 100 of you that are going to come that also should be welcomed into that space. So Ajit, when you you being the brown guy that's successful in coaching, there's probably, of the 20,000, people that have gotten your certification, there's probably a couple thousand that look like you because they saw you succeeding and said, hey, I actually am really, curious and intuitive, and I love, I want to help people. And they didn't even see that as a possibility for their career. And so you can't be what you don't see, right? You can't be what you can't see. And that's why it's even more important for you to succeed. And that's why it's even more important for, if you are different, not only for you to succeed, but for you to be able to share that story and to bring other people up with you as well.
Yeah. And that's so true, because I do get those messages now.
Yeah.
Like, until you came along, I always thought, oh, this world is only for, white people, or whatever the narrative was for them. But me coming in, even if I'm Indian, it has given permission to Latinos, it's given permission to people from the Middle East. And so the reason we can do the volume that we do is because they're global. If I go to any part of the world and I say I'm here, or at least 100 people come in from that country, because we have graduated people across the globe, not just in America, which is a very unique thing, because of my funny accent, probably because of the way I look. People can go, oh, if this dude can do it, he doesn't even look that smart. I can probably do it. So it's really great. And you are right. When you are the first one through the door, it feels harder, and maybe is harder.
It is harder.
But it definitely creates space for other people to be able to get in. Where I also want to recognize one thing that you shared, which I think is true for most women that I've interacted with in my life, is generally women are so much more kinder because of how just they are, which has created this, and my teams tend to be about 80% female, sometimes 100% female except me, not by any other reason, but because of the approach to work they have. And I do think the future has a lot different way how the boardrooms will look. And I'm not saying long-term future, I'm saying maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, because women are such great team builders that I think men have to completely change the way they operate to be able to do the same things or bring the same capabilities to the table. Ideal CEO to me right now is a female, not a guy. And actually there was some research that somebody did. It's not my research and I don't remember the reference here, but the research they did, and they were like an investor, and they did a research with male CEO-run companies and female-run CEO companies, and they found the female CEOs tend to hit the goals faster, and the happiness level of the team tends to be higher because of how women are. So I think there is that element that sometimes may look like a weakness, like, oh, I'm kind as a person, and so I will, even when I should draw a line, I don't. That's also one of those trends that is so beautiful to have, because that is creating a whole different narrative for women in not just tech, but everywhere in business, I think.
I love this. And I think everyone should be kind, right? And you're right. I think women are, what you're talking about is we're more nurturing, right? And that's because men and women are physically built different. Our brains, I actually had a neurologist on my podcast, and she studied the male and female brain. And we are different. Like, we literally, our brains can handle different things. Women are really great at being able to do we can see things in we're very multi-passionate and can do things in different lanes. Men get very focused on the one thing, and then, but that's because you had one job, right? Like, if you look at the primitive time, like, it was, you had to go out and hunt, and that was your job. And as women, we had to make the village and have the babies and we're part of community. Women naturally are part of community. But I agree with you that the world would look much more amazing if we had equitable, across the boardrooms, if we had equity across the boardrooms. And you said it's going to happen in 5 years. It's not going to happen in 5 years. Research shows that it's actually going to be 208 years before women have an equitable workplace and where we have true parity, even in pay, right? Like, we're still, women are making 80 cents to the dollar compared to men. And the research shows that it's not 5 to 10 years away. And I'll tell you why it's not 5 to 10 years away. The dialogue is happening. Certain industries, it's happening. But take a look at even world, like, where the world is in chaos right now. The world is in chaos right now. There are no women in charge in the world from a political standpoint as well. Right? So there's a huge gap right now and it's not about politics, but it is about having women at the forefront also making decisions. If we had women at the top of the world making decisions for the world would be a much more empathetic place, right? Egos would be put aside. The world would come together. That is not just my belief, that is what you said, nature versus nurture, how we're built. If you look at how the teams we built, I do believe that from a world standpoint. That's number one. Number two, if you look at boardrooms today, so even right now, the percentages of women across in publicly traded companies, we're having more of the dialogue. It's still sub 40%. So still we're making progress, but it's not at parity. And the reason why it's not at parity, it has to start at the top. It has to start at the top. So, and we've got to get women at the top, because when women are at the top, then we bring women up as well. But it can't just be women for women, right? Men have to come to the table to say, like, just like what you're saying. And I love that you recognize this. But in certain industries, it's just not there. We don't even have women that are, if you look at, graduates of technology, engineering, coding, right? From early age, like, there's so much of the system that has to change, and it starts at every point, has to start at the top. So it has to be a tops down approach, and it has to be a bottoms up approach, even of how I'm raising my girls. I have 2 young girls. I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, and even how we talk to our girls, right? And showing them the different opportunities of different career paths, and allowing, from an early age to start having different kinds of dialogue. So it starts, I believe, there's so many things that have to change. But unfortunately, Ajit, we're not even close to parity. In 2024, I'll share a few other stats, because this is where my passion is. I don't want to be one of 20 women that have built $1 billion business. I didn't know I could go build $1 million business, let alone $1 billion business. I believe that women, we need to be thinking bigger and building bigger companies, right? And less than 2% of female founders, this is the stat from 2020, build a business that's over $1 million in revenue. That's how that's how my podcast started, CEO School. And the challenge there, it's not that we're not starting businesses. When you talk about parity, and what you're seeing in parity is, yes, almost 50% of businesses are started by women now. So it's like 47% or something very high that women are actually starting businesses at a much more equitable standpoint than men. But yet men are 8 times more likely to achieve that $1 million success versus a woman who's starting a business. And the reason why is because the network, right? So the boys club is still really strong. Network also equals resources, equals capital. If you look at capital in 2024, so this is the stat that when I started in 2012, when I was raising venture capital, less than 3% of venture capital went to female-founded businesses. In 2023, last year's stats still showed that less than 3% of venture capital still went to women-founded businesses. And so it's not, the dialogue is happening, right? And you're right. You shared a stat, not only do women build better teams, women funded, right? So for investors, we carry a more profitable business, because we care so much about every dollar. Like, if I'm taking $1, I'm returning that dollar. So which we're much more conscious of how we build our companies, and we make for greater investments. Yet, if you look at the true statistics right now, Ajit, they are so disparate. And so a lot has to change. And the dialogue is great. The dialogue is exciting. We are making progress. I don't want to take away from progress, but we have to start holding institutions accountable. It has to start at the top. We've got to look also intrinsically to say, what is around, like, how are we contributing to that change? And I also believe that as parents, like, how are we fostering that for our young girls so that they can be the CEOs and the future presidents as well?
I agree with all of that. And I still don't think it'll take 200 years. I think it's maybe 20. If my 5-year prediction is wrong, maybe 20.
I would love that. And I'm just sharing I'm sharing a report, and I'll share it with you. I'm just sharing where the stats are currently. And we're just talking in the U.S.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that research is wrong. I'm saying research that is predictive is usually always wrong.
Okay.
Because it's predicted.
I hope so. I'm not counting on it. I'm just sharing that dialogue is there. Action is what matters.
Yeah. And I think action's happening because the grassroots have changed, and it will continue to change. And at least I can say for the industries that I've looked at, tech maybe not, but tech also maybe gets a big piece of the venture capital pie, but doesn't really make the biggest piece of the world pie. It picks the biggest valuation pie, but there are daily transaction that's happening.
Yeah.
It's if women are not the founders, they are the leadership of the company that has been founded.
Yeah.
That's a huge win already, because the CEO is the next level after you are, say, the CFO of the company or the CMO of the company. And they're already the CFOs and the CMOs of the company, or they're becoming, because that's the next wave. I think there was some stat that says 54% of not executive, but like jobs, not like bricklayers, but actual jobs in companies are actually
women.
Women. Yeah. So that effectively means in the next 5 to 10 years, when it comes to picking the leadership of a company, you have to pick based on performance.
Yeah.
And if they are mostly women, you will end up getting a 50% of the boardroom. unless you are really crappy leader. And that may be case with a lot of companies, sure, that the CEO is that terrible that they don't understand that, well, clearly the performers are females, but I'm still going to go promote a man over them. And they'll lose that leadership. And I'm sure the company is going to tank soon enough because they never learned.
I think it's also about, advocacy and women also, one of the things that I find most often when I'm with women in the rooms is we're championing each other, but we're not championing ourselves. And so if you look at stats of even for positions, right? So if you are, look at how many women will apply for a position. So there's some studies that show that if a man is like 50% qualified to do the job, he's going to apply for the job. But if a woman is not, if she's 100% qualified to do it, she may still not apply for the job and that's the dialogue. And that's the things that we really do have to. It is important not only for managers to recognize this or for CEOs to recognize this, but also for us to put our name in the hat, right? To be able to go achieve it too. So I think that that's an important part of it.
So with you 100%. And I believe in humanity that we are fast learners. We sometimes have a slow start, but once we get to it, we are exponential. I think we are at that
That's
stage.
My wish. I'm a girl mom. Yeah. And that's why I do everything that I do is because I want.
It could be because I'm a girl dad too. So it's very possible that my hope stems from there.
I think
But I've seen my wife. I've seen people around me. I've like I said, 80% of my talent, and that's the reason why my companies go really fast. The NPS scores and all those wonderful things is I'm sure I'm awesome in some way, but it's also because of my teams have always been amazing, and I've been able to build incredible teams thanks to women in my team. So I do think that's the future. I think that is going to happen sooner or later.
The future is female.
The future is female, or the future is a combination of both.
Future is equitable.
But we're equitable. Yes,
it's equitable.
I think that's what it is.
I think it's an important part. I think when we talk about feminism, and feminism is not women greater than men. That's not what this is. It's not. It's not, just want to have an equitable space. That's it. Want to be treated from a mind equitable standpoint, right? That's it. It's the equitable opportunity, we have equitable intellect that should be leveraged. That's what equality is.
Yeah. And I think it's gonna get there sooner or later. It'll get there. And I'm sure people like you are already creating paths. I'm contributing my little bit. I think from what I can. And I think we are on path to it. We're going to have a better future because we will do it together as human beings and collaborators. Suneera, what would be a message that you want to leave with our listeners today?
Oh, I think this is so exciting what you're getting to do. I think, your audience and coaches, you really do get to shape minds, right? You really get to inspire and bring out the best in people. I think it's such an important role. I wouldn't be here where I'm at today if I didn't have the most incredible mentors and coaches who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And so I really just want you to know that you have a really important role. It's important for you to succeed. It's important for you to bring about kindness and love out of these leaders, right? Because the people that you're shaping are the future leaders of tomorrow. And, you have a hope for the world in the same way that I do. And I really do believe that if we come from a place of love first, if we come from a place of kindness, if we come from that place just naturally and get curious, not furious, and are patient and are loving and give benefit of the doubt, that the world would just be a much more incredible place, not just for ourselves, but for the future generations. And so your role is so important, so amazing. And I hope you succeed in all that you do and continue to find ways to scale and to be that outlier. I think being an outlier, we talked a lot about being different. Use it as your strength and build big, right? Build big. I think that's my newsletter is called Big Business Energy. And I'm all about bringing big business energy.
Yeah. How can people learn about your newsletter, about the CEO School podcast, and what else should we know about?
You can follow me online. So Suneera Madhani, and I'll link to the podcast. So subscribe to CEO School. So if you want to scale your business, it's my business is my passion. Scaling is my passion. Doing it from a place of empathetic leadership, of course. So that's CEO School. It's super awesome. We have a show that's released every Monday. So subscribe to that. And then if you just follow me, you'll get to see everything that I'm building, for where it scores. So sign up for the wait list for getting your business credit score. My goal is to have 10,000 beta customers on launch. So I'd love your support in that. And just follow along. From there, you can subscribe to the newsletter. It's every Wednesday, Big Business Energy, all the things. And so that's how you can find me, Suneera Madhani.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time
Thank you.
today.